Hey yo guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags and Metal Reviews, and today we're getting our first impressions of the new releases of today, including Architects, Exhumed, Serj Tankian, Black Veil Brides, and In This Moment. So, just to get this out here, only two of those that I just mentioned are full LPs, the rest are EPs. We don't cover a lot of EPs on the channel, but for these first impressions videos, it just makes sense to cover them if they're notable.
Yeah, why not?
And, Serj Tankian, Black Veil Brides, and In This Moment are all pretty notable.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to start off with In This Moment because out of the two of us, I'm actually the only one that checked this EP out.
I didn't get the chance to listen to it.
It's called Blood in 1983, and from my understanding, it's actually just re-recordings or remasters or reissues of older songs. I'm not a big In This Moment fan, so I don't exactly know.
I looked into it a little bit, and it looks like it's kind of like an anniversary version of that album, which I think was called Blood. And
Yes.
the songs are like older songs, but like done differently. I didn't listen. I just
That sounds about right. Exactly, and all the songs are like the song title plus 1983 after them. And what it sounds like to me is like just like this 80s synth infusion with the song. It was nothing special. It was okay. I'm pretty sure In This Moment fans will probably enjoy it. I didn't really get much out of it, so I'm not going to say much about it. He didn't listen to it. I think it's worth checking out. I always say that about everything because my opinion is just my opinion. So
80 synth sounds cool, so I'll probably check it out anyway.
yeah, give it a listen. It just wasn't really something that I gravitated towards. After that, let's do Black Veil Bride. So I don't have a lot to say about this. Again, similar. I'm not a huge BVB fan by any means, but I do like some of their stuff. They're heavier, metalcore-y stuff. This one, it was a little bit soft. It's very ballady. There's some heavy stuff on there, but it's got some ballady type of stuff on there.
It's kind of like a ballad sandwich.
It's like a ballad sandwich. The first track and the last track,
they're more active and kind of heavier. It's just the middle is where you got the lighter stuff.
right. So I don't know if you want to add anything to BVB.
I mean, that's really about it. Kind of. I like the first and last.
It's called The Morning, by the way. I forgot the morning with a U.
Like with a U. And the first and last track I did like. The middle tracks I was just indifferent on. It's like, okay, fine, whatever. But the first and last tracks I enjoyed. I mean, they did release an album last year that I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
It was neat.
But similar to In This Moment, I think fans of this band will probably like it a lot more than people that don't listen to the band. It's not really something that's going to pull you towards the band, I don't think.
For the most part, no. Maybe the first and last track.
Maybe. Serj Tankian.
Perplex Cities.
Perplex Cities, obviously of System of a Down fame. This was okay. I mean, I like Serj, I like his voice, I like his writing. He's got a unique talent. But this didn't really do much for me. I'm starting to sound like a negative Nancy here. Like, I don't like this, I don't like it. But, it is what it is. Track number 2, which is called The Race, is probably the best track on this EP for me. And it was because that had some cool riffs. It had this very eerie and ominous kind of vibe to it. And the riffs, I don't even know if it was the whole song or maybe just part of it, but it had this cool bending strings or whatever kind of sound that I thought was kind of cool. It wasn't quite Darren Malakian style, and it's probably not appropriate for me to even say that, but it's like, when you listen to Serj, you want something that sounds like System. I mean, I feel like that's just a natural thing, at least for me anyway. And it's not fair because he does his own thing. He's a solo artist as well, so I don't know. It was okay. That song, The Race, was the highlight for me.
I think you can still tell that there is the System of a Down sound, even though this sounds so extremely far removed from the sound of that band.
Because it's Serj.
It's not only his voice alone, but the melodic foundation that he brings to his vocal lines sound like how he would perform in System of a Down.
Yeah, well, that's his writing style.
And that's his writing style. That's it. He's a guy who is in System of a Down. You'd imagine that's how he writes music. However, a lot of this album to me sounds like it would be composed for a film, which makes a lot of sense considering that Serj has composed for film before. So it makes sense that his solo stuff, he would use that style in it as well. And I do like that. I like that a lot of it kind of sounds ambient and chill. I wouldn't really say it's that much metal sounding.
Yeah.
You don't really come out of this EP saying, like, that was a good metal EP.
Well, that was heavy as fuck or nothing like that.
Yeah, the last song is probably the closest this album comes to, like, just a straight-up kind of song with a band. So I guess if you really want the heaviest sounding song, I use that in quotations because it's like, okay, well, what do you define? But I would say maybe the last track, but even so, I thought it was neat. I thought it was cool. It's definitely something I would put on if I want to relax. 100%. And
Yeah.
I'm interested in checking out his other EPs because he's done a bunch of solo stuff.
He has
and
done a bunch of stuff. And I have checked out a bunch of it.
Yeah?
Not all of it, but
Does it sound much similar to this?
it's like it's stuff that I can listen to. I got no ill feelings against it, but it's kind of like a one and done for me. Right? It's never anything I've ever wanted to really go back and revisit, which is a shame because I like the guy. So,
Enough.
what do you want to do next? Let's do Exhumed next.
To the Dead.
To the Dead.
There's something really big I noticed about this album when I put it on, and I've mentioned this on the channel multiple times, and probably said the same thing multiple times, but this band does something unique with it. Now, the old school death metal sound, I'm talking 1980s, was a sound that sounded very raw, very unprocessed, not mixed much.
Yeah.
And to me, the way I kind of interpret that is that, okay, this sounds like a basement tape or a demo, and I was never really a fan of that just audio quality.
Right.
The content of the stuff is good stuff.
Yeah.
It's just that audio quality I'm just not a fan of because I'm like, wow, it feels like I'm listening to a demo. This doesn't sound complete. It doesn't sound like they mixed this at all. They just tracked it with some really cheap equipment.
Well,
and
he's talking about old stuff.
I'm talking about the old stuff.
Yeah.
This album is mixed in a way that sounds like they recorded it the same way a band would have recorded in the 80s, but it's actually processed and sounds good. Like audibly it sounds cohesive, and I'm like, wow, I like how well this was mixed, but it also sounds like, you know, they recorded this old school style, and I love how they nailed that. Now, for example, a band like Cannibal Corpse, who is from way back then, and they did sound like that way back in the day, sounds really good now with, like, in terms of the audio quality, you know, of their mix. It's a lot different now. It's a lot more crisp and clean and clear, but it doesn't sound like it was recorded the same way it was recorded back then.
Yeah.
But this Exhumed album does, but it still sounds clear to my ears, and I love that. I thought that was really cool, and this is really the only album, at least I don't listen to too much just straight up death metal, but this is one of the only ones I've checked out that actually really invokes that in my ears, and I like that a lot. I do, however, feel like at some points the vocals were kind of quiet. Kind of felt like they were behind everything else at some points, but in front of everything else for like different growls, which I found a little bit weird, but still, like, that's really the only criticism I have of the mix. Other than that, it sounded really good. And there were some neat riffs here and there, but overall, like, I don't really think there were any riffs that really jumped out as like, whoa, that one's kick-ass. It's like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, that's a neat solo. Like, nothing was too phenomenal about the performance, but it was still good. It's still just straight up good death metal.
Yeah, I agree. That's good. I mean, it's just that typical classic death metal sound, which is the goodness.
It's tried and true.
It's tried and true, right? You really can't go wrong. So listening to it, it's great from beginning to end. A couple standout tracks for me: track number 8 and track number 10. So that's No Headstone Unturned, and track number 10, which I think is the last track, called Disgusted. Just fucking awesome death metal tracks. I mean, you just can't go wrong really with the whole album if you're into that stuff. I'm trying to think of anything further I can really say about it. The whole thing about the mix and stuff like that, my ears didn't really get that deep into it, but he does make a good point about how polished bands are nowadays. Even older bands sound much more polished now, and sometimes people don't like that. Sometimes people like the older sound because that rawness, that demo tape style recording is what gives it character, and that's sometimes that's an attribute that people actually it appeals to people sometimes in a way, right? So take it for what it's worth. It sounds pretty good. It's less than 40 minutes long, and it's solid from beginning to end. Architects, the classic symptoms of a broken spirit. So we were talking about this briefly before we started recording this video, and we're both in agreement that this is now the front runner for worst album art of the year. We're just going to put that out there.
There's no way. How do you get worse? It's just white screen, text.
The winner, the leader before this was Drowning Pool's album,
Strike a Nerve.
Strike a Nerve, which was just sounded like
pretty bad.
It was just horrible. Look it up if you want to see it.
Album
This one's the worst. There's nothing there. It's just pure white with the words. And to make it worse, and this was a triggering factor for me, and I don't know why, but I was looking at it, I was getting irked. There's no capital letters. The songs are all lowercase.
Oh yeah.
The beginnings of the songs are all lowercase. The album title is all lowercase. The band name is capitalized, and that's it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Are you so too lazy you can't hit a shift key?
Well, I kind of like it. I feel like that's a stylistic choice.
I think it is too, but it was weird.
When I looked at that before checking out this album, I thought to myself, oh, this is going to be a trip. The fact that they stylized it like this, like something in my head said, this is going to be a big emotional trip based on the album name, the song names. I feel like there could be something here, like almost like I Let It In and It Took Everything by Load. Like I felt like I was going to get that kind of experience here. I got absolutely not that by any means necessary, or by any means at all. I mentioned this about We Came as Romans last week. It just sounds like a metalcore album, and there's not much about this that's really remarkable. There were like 2 songs I kind of liked, Burn Down My House and A New Moral Low Ground. That song kind of had a little bit of a post-hardcore feel, which I like, because I like post-hardcore. But for the most part, it's metalcore, and that's about it.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you say it's just metalcore, because I found that this was like sub-metalcore. I feel like this is a band, for one, let me just get this out there, I don't listen to this band. I know of the band, I've probably heard something from them before, but this was kind of like my introduction to Architects. And I've heard a lot about them. I've seen people request them, I've seen people talk about them. I know a lot of people really genuinely like this band, which is cool. So I was excited, thinking, okay, maybe this is another band that I can add to my list of bands that I like. I was expecting a metalcore band that sounded basic and typical, like We Came as Romans kind of thing. But I don't feel like I got that. I feel like I got something that was sub that. I feel like I got something that was watered down, or something that was maybe a little bit more, kind of me trying to be a little more radio friendly, a little bit more like rock and roll or heavy rock orientated, rather than just typical metalcore. Not that the metalcore aspect wasn't there, it just didn't feel like it was full-on metalcore to me. There was only one song for me that stood out, and that was track number 11, called Be Very Afraid. Has a great drum intro, it's got higher energy than the rest of the album. And it's just more of what I expected stylistically from this band. Good riffs as well. But yeah, I'm gonna just be honest, I was disappointed in this because like I said, I've seen and talked to people that put this band pretty high on a pedestal, and I think that, maybe I'm wrong, but I think their older previous stuff probably sounds much different than this. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that this isn't quite what this band generally sounds like, and that their older stuff is probably a lot better. Similar to like Parkway Drive, for example, who, you know, came out onto the scene, blew a bunch of people away, gathered a bunch of fans, and then now they're putting out stuff that's kind of, you know, a different direction than what the core fans are used to. I feel like this might be that same type of vibe. So, out of the 2 LPs we checked out, we always try to, you know, figure out which album we're going to review. And we talked about this before the video, and we're actually going to not review an album this week because we weren't feeling too strongly about either of them, and we didn't want to basically waste a week just to give a substandard or subpar review next week. So we're going to do a free week, which means that you guys can leave your comments down below and let us know anything that we might have missed checking out over the past several months, album-wise, that we need to listen to consider for our year-end video when we put together our top 5s. So, yeah, no review this week, but we always want to hear from you guys about everything we talked about in this video. And again, leave your comments down below and let us know what we should check out album-wise that we missed from whatever metal bands across whatever genres. Anyways, that's it for the video, so do that. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm Vile Self.
I'm TV Fish.
I'll see you guys on the next one.